So as Sarah said, hello everyone, I'm Cindy Hope. If you are wondering who in the world I am and where did Jim Luther go, just sit tight and hold on. We'll be getting to that momentarily. Meanwhile, you'll be relieved to know that Michelle Bowles is still our co-chair, our federal co-chair from the National Institutes of Health, and she hasn't gone anywhere. I am not sure, however, if she's had a chance to join us.
I'm in.
Hey, Michelle, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well.
Thank you. I am. Next slide, Sarah. Thank you. So this is just a brief agenda for our meeting today. As I mentioned, there's been some changes in committee leadership that we'll update you on. We're going to spend the bulk of this meeting on data management and sharing. If you attended the September session, you'll know that we did bring this up and we had a lot of slides, but we were rushed and had run out of time because of the rest of the content for that meeting. But today we're going to take the opportunity to regroup on that just a little bit, maybe revisit, make sure that everything that was important was communicated, but not to spend too much time repeating anything, and then move into capturing some additional feedback from all of you through thought exchange. We also have a video presentation from one of our sister organizations, the Association of Research Libraries. They're going to tell us about their Nrsa funded project in this space. And then we'll talk about what are our next steps, the working group that we have discussed that we might form, and be asking for membership and leadership for that group. And then at the end, we will just remind you that we do have some other efforts that are ongoing, and let you know that we're open to other ideas for future working groups for this committee. So that's it for that. Thanks. Next slide, Sarah. So as I said, we have our federal co-chair with us, Michelle Bowles, and I am taking over on a temporary basis from Jim Luther, who I'm sure you'll all be happy for Jim that he was able to retire from Duke. And I know I'm happy, and we should all be happy that he is still involved in FDP. You'll probably be seeing him throughout this meeting. He is primarily involved with the efforts of the group that are focused on the foreign influence topics. So I know there are some sessions that we're looking forward to related to that. So I am with Georgia Tech. Some of you might remember me from when I was the chair of the Federal Demonstration Partnership. That was a few years ago. And at that time, I was with the University of Alabama. But because of my work with the FDP in the past, and because of the the need to have a replacement for Jim right away, we went ahead and did this as a temporary measure. But the plan is in order to make sure that we don't just keep recycling the same old people like me over and over in these different leadership roles. We will, this won't be the normal 3 to 6 year term for me. As a matter of fact, we already have Christy Keene, who has stepped up and stepped in and been a great help in getting this session together, and from the time Jim stepped down through today, with helping to manage the committee. So, the plan is that over the next year, you'll be seeing less of me and more of people like Michelle and Christy who actually know things. So next slide. And speaking of people who actually know things, I am now going to turn this over to Melissa Korff with Harvard Medical School. You probably know her as our chair for the FDP's Research Compliance Committee, and also their subcommittee on data stewardship. So Melissa, you please take it away.
Thanks so much, Cindy. Hi, everybody. As Cindy said, my name is Melissa Korff. I'm the Director for Grants and Contracts at Harvard Medical School, and I'm also the co-chair of the Research Compliance Committee and inaugural co-chair of the Data Stewardship Committee. So all things data management, sharing, and stewardship are near and dear to my heart. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time today kind of digging into some of the costing specific issues that relate to data management. As Cindy mentioned, we've kind of touched on some of these topics a little bit over previous sessions, but with the implementation date of the new NIH policy, just about a little over a year away, it's really time to get to work in earnest on some of these topics. Next slide, please. So if you all have been in some other sessions today, most notably the research administration session earlier today, you might have experienced this thing called thought exchange. It's something that we've done previously leading up to sessions to gather feedback, or perhaps after sessions to collect feedback. But we're trying something a little bit different this meeting, and we're opening up some sort of live thought exchanges as a sort of suggestion box as we move through a session. And because leading up to the last meeting, we did a really faculty focused thought exchange where we asked faculty, what are the most important things that either your institution or a federal agency sponsor could do to support data management and sharing from a costing perspective. And we really got a lot of valuable feedback from that perspective. But as we look forward to really kicking off our FDP's work in this space, we wanted to also take the pulse from a sort of institutional or administrative perspective and ask the question, what is the thing from a costing perspective and data management sharing? What are the things, or is the thing that FDP could do that would be of most help to your institution in this space? So Sarah also, thanks so much, Sarah, popped the link to the thought exchange in the chat. And if you go to that link, it'll open up the thought exchange. You can have that open at the same time that you're participating in our session. It'll follow you through some prompts to give us just a little bit of demographic data. And then you can enter any thoughts that you think of as we're going through the content of the session in terms of ideas that you'd like us to take on. And then please do go ahead and rank some of the suggestions that your colleagues might enter. This helps us identify what are going to be the most impactful, important things that we can take on as we move our work forward. Also, just a really quick note, though, we do ask for some demographic information. Any of the thoughts that you share in the rankings are totally anonymous, so you don't have to worry that your good friend is going to feel bad if you give their thought or their suggestion a 1 or a 5. Next slide, please. So we wanted to start with just some background information in terms of what we've talked about previously and some of the other activity that's going on in this space. As NIH has said when they talk about the new policy, they're really hoping to inspire a cultural transformation, a cultural shift in data management and sharing. And whenever you talk about a cultural shift, there is no lack of work to be done to really support everyone through that change. And so Jim has shared this draft matrix several times previously, trying to kind of map out all of the different aspects of data management costing through the life cycle. It isn't just where do we store it? There's a lot that goes into data management and sharing and really supporting that. And where does that come in through the life cycle? How can we best support that? How can we best cost for that? Next slide, please. And to recap a little bit, some of our thought exchange results from the last session, the 3 top areas of concern that surfaced for faculty were, number 1 was data storage at closeout. After my award ends and I still have to retain my research data, or I might still have to clean it or use it, maybe maintain it so I can share it. How am I going to pay for that? Because now the award has ended. data security. In many cases, if you have to comply with a very specialized data security requirement or a requirement that your institution doesn't already support, that can be very costly to stand up that new environment and comply with those controls. And then also data management plan monitoring compliance. It surfaces as a pretty big concern during the life of the award, but specifically at closeout. How are we gonna, when we're going to close out an award, how are we gonna make sure that we've complied with everything that was in that data management plan and actually, take all the steps to make sure that the data is put where it needs to go. We also asked, the most common data sets that are utilized. The number one is data acquired through the own research activities. After that is a data set that might be provided by the institution. And then third is a data set that might be acquired through purchase. Next slide, please. This is just the word cloud that was generated. You see that requirements features there, prominently in the middle: funding, costs, budgets, consistency, guidance, just a lot of different words that we're all familiar with surfacing from our faculty's feedback. Next slide, please. Some other projects that are going on in this space are things like the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine report on life cycle decisions for biomedical data. Next slide. Other folks may have heard about the AEU, APLU, Accelerating Public Access to Research Data, or APARD. That was also published, I think, just very recently in the fall. And these are, when you get the slides, these are links if you want to go take a look at some of these reports. Next slide, please. And most recently, NIST is working on developing a research data framework. So costing will have a piece in this framework, but it's really looking from an institutional perspective at everything that goes into developing a framework to support use, sharing, storage, management of research data. And they've published a preliminary framework. I think, NIST is planning several different workshops over the next few months to further refine that preliminary framework until they come up with a final framework that they'll publish. Next slide, please. And another project that we wanted to make sure we were all aware of, because it does have a component that's going to be really relevant to our work in the costing space, is the ARL project Realities of Academic Data Sharing. And so we asked Cynthia Hudson-Vitale, who's the PI of this NSF funded study, to share a little bit of information with us on her project so that we can hopefully, use this information to foster further collaborations as her work and our work moves forward. Unfortunately, Cynthia wasn't able to join us in person today, but she was gracious enough to record a brief presentation for us on the study. So we wanted to share that video with you now.
We don't hear it, Sarah. You might have to stop sharing and share the computer sound again.
Okay.
Research Library.
Yep.
Hello, and thank you for asking me to join you today to speak about a recent funded project called The Realities of Academic Data Sharing. My name is Cynthia Hudson-Vitale. And I am the Director of Scholars and Scholarship with the Association of Research Libraries. For those of you that are unfamiliar with it, the Association of Research Libraries is a nonprofit member organization representing 126 of the largest federal and academic and public research libraries in the US and Canada. Within our portfolio is our areas focused on university-based publishing, research services, and the evolving scholarly record. Today, I'm here to speak with you about a recent NSF grant we received focused on better understanding the realities of academic data sharing. The research team is comprised of myself, Jake Carlson from the University of Michigan, Jennifer Moore from Washington University in St. Louis, John Petters from Virginia Tech, Joel Herndon, who is the director of the Center for Data Visualization at Duke University, Lisa Johnston from the University of Minnesota, and Wendy Kozlowski from Cornell University. We also have an advisory board made up of representatives from AAU, APLU, COGR, and ARL membership. So this research project specifically seeks to answer where funded researchers are sharing their data, what is the quality of the metadata, how are researchers making decisions about why and how to share their data, and what is the cost to the institution to implement the federally mandated public access to research data policies. So ARL is working directly with these 6 institutions to conduct this research. And we've divided it into 3 specific phases. 1, we hope to assess public access to research data repository use. 2, conduct a retrospective study of public access research data practices of faculty across 5 disciplines on academic campuses. And 3, collect financial information on expenses related to public access to research data. To scope this, we are looking at 5 specific disciplines: environmental science, material science, psychology, the biomedical sciences, and physics. And we will drill down into these areas as well. So our work plan, phase 1, to better understand where researchers share their data, we will leverage the data site and Crossref API to understand where data is shared. We will stratify this by institution, subject keyword, funding agency, and data location. So we're really interested to see our folks sharing their data on institutional repositories, domain or subject specific repositories, or is it in other general repositories such as Zenodo or elsewhere? And then assess the metadata quality across those public access locations. 2, we hope to do a retrospective study of researcher public access to data practices. So looking at those 5 disciplinary areas, we hope to hold focus groups with research teams on their practices, while also collecting costing information on the use of campus-based services and non-campus services to make data available. This component or phase of the project will also involve campus mapping of services and infrastructure. And 3, so phase 2 and 3 are really kind of a Venn diagram in many ways. We want to better understand the approximate costs of public access to research data. So our approach to this is to conduct the landscape analysis of existing costing frameworks, prioritize the costing buckets or the costing activities based on institutional stakeholder needs, and 3, incorporate those costing questions into the focus group work of phase 2. And that's why I say they're kind of interrelated. So our expected outputs, we really will have data and information about where funded researchers are sharing their research data, along with workflows for institutions to do the same. So some very clear methods and protocols about how an institution can better understand where faculty are sharing their data. Models for institutional support to public access to research data. So in the phase 2 of the project, when we're doing that campus mapping, we're really hoping to see how different institutions are organizationally set up to facilitate public access to research data. We will be developing disciplinary case studies and decision-making factors influencing public access to research data. So this is going to come out of the focus group specifically. And then finally, we really hope to produce a number of data, information, and case studies on costs for public access to research data and the possible differentiators for those expenses. So this is a 2-year project. It kicked off in August. Each of the phases of the work have a subcommittee that is working to answer the questions and to define a very clear project plan. So within the costing framework, or in the costing phase of the work, we have completed the landscape analysis of public access to research data costing. That included analysis across 5 existing data activity costing frameworks. So looking at what were the defined activities, what were any key considerations or descriptions of the work, and what was the model and process for building that. So across these 5 areas, or excuse me, across these 5 frameworks, we have a couple of takeaways that we learned. First, none of the existing frameworks address the entire life cycle of research. Many of them were focused on specific areas such as storage or preservation or curation, and they went down to a very granular level, and it wasn't taking into consideration all of the different aspects at once. So lots of opportunity for this grant to then bring those together and think about how we can think about things more holistically. Additionally, one of the takeaways we had after doing this landscape analysis is that the activities that comprise public access to research data or data sharing should be distinct from scientific data activities. So if we want to hone in on just this one component, I mean, just this one, but it's of many activities, we need to be sure that we're only focusing on the activities specific for data sharing or public access to data. So that means certain components of data visualization may not be included in the costs, or when a researcher talks about data cleaning, are they talking about, standardizing Excel sheets for definitions of variables, in which case that could potentially be a public access to research data costing component, or it could not be. So the questions and the work done in phase 2 is going to be really important, as well as the definitions around these activities. The third kind of big takeaway after doing the landscape analysis was really that costs for public access to research data are best captured across the phases of the project. And you can see in the image on the right side of the screen, am I right? That it's just an example of how this is probably the best way to capture this information. So the phases of the research, whether those costs are one-time or reoccurring, whether they're direct or indirect, and what is the division between labor and capital. And obviously these can be dollar signs for each of these, or they could potentially be percent effort. So moving forward, that's going to be how we kind of consider collecting this information and making it available. So as was stated previously, after this phase of the research is completed, we will be trying to prioritize what of these activities are critical for our stakeholders at our institutions to know about. There's a little bit of concern that there's among the research group that there's so many activities still that are possible to collect information about. What'll kind of give us a high enough yet complete view of what this cost is. So to do that, we will be developing a survey instrument and conducting brief interviews with institutional stakeholders to prioritize the most important public access to research data costing activities. So really hoping to engage researchers directly, library directors, vice presidents of research office folks, campus-based IT, as well as presidents and provosts. And we're hoping to run this next step of this phase of the research in Q1 and Q2 of 2022. We would love the opportunity to engage with FDP and its members. I know that there was a thought exchange done previously, and we're hoping to leverage that work to informing some of these priorities too. But if there are additional opportunities where we can work with you and run some of the same questions through, or if you just want to kind of dig in deep with this work, we would love the opportunity to engage with you more. So thank you very much for the time today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this research project. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions. Thank you. Bye.
All right, Sarah, next slide, please. So we're so thankful that Cynthia was willing to record that presentation for us. And like she said, if you have any questions for her that you'd want to ask directly, she shared her email address. I think we can pop that in the chat maybe in a minute as well. But if you have any questions that you'd want to send ARL's way, if you want to include those in the chat, unfortunately, since she wasn't able to join us in person, we can't ask those questions live, but we're able to share those with her later. We can save the chat and we can always follow up. And she's very interested, and we're very interested in keeping up a collaboration to make sure that we're moving forward in our activities in the space synergistically and working well together. And so, maybe there's opportunities for us to have her back as well to address any other questions or present on some of the results of their study. So now that we've talked a little bit about some of the background and some of the things that have happened up until this point, we wanted to share some of the draft sections of the working group charter. This would be a joint working group between finance, audit, and costing, and the research compliance data stewardship subcommittee to make sure that we've kind of got both the really strong costing expertise as well as some expertise related to the issues of data management sharing, some of the ethical considerations that might contribute to costs as well. And this is the background section from the charter. I know that this is a lot of text to read in a presentation, but when you get the slides later, if you take a look at that and you have any feedback, please do share that with us. Next slide, please. And this is perhaps maybe the more meat of the charter. What is the description of the activity that this working group will take on? And this group will focus on and act as FDP's key point of contact for this evolving topic, how it's affecting FDP member organizations, focus on activities that we could undertake to identify obstacles to effective data management and sharing, specifically costing obstacles, including reimbursement of allocable costs. We're also looking at this because there is so much activity in this space and no shortage of work to go around to make sure that we're really, exploring every opportunity to reduce burden and provide guidance and really support our faculty and member organizations through implementation of the NIH policy. One of the other aspects of this working group will be trying to maintain coordination with groups like ARL, COGR, to make sure that we're all steering a ship in a sort of a similar direction instead of potentially going to run our ships into each other. Next slide, please. So Cindy, I don't know if you want to jump in here when we get to the call for volunteers.
Sure. I'll just say that I appreciate everybody participating so far in this. I really thought that the video that Cynthia did for us was great. She expressed interest not only in the video, but before when we were talking with her about collaborating with us. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity there, especially if you look at what she was saying that they would be doing in their phase 3. I could see us working with them during that, and also us learning from them and their efforts and how this working group could potentially move forward and things that it could focus on. And also, she mentioned that they had already gotten good information from the previous thought exchange. We'll certainly let her know not only that we appreciated her video, but that we did another thought exchange during the session and make sure that she has access to that information. So anyway, just while I was thinking about that, I wanted to mention it. But if you have any interest in this working group, we're looking for people from this committee who have strong costing background. You don't necessarily have to be an indirect cost specialist if you've had a lot of experience with service centers. anything that would lend itself to, an understanding of the costing issues and to contribute in that way, because we're expecting Melissa's subcommittee, to provide volunteers who will bring other things to the table that other than the costing. So, I mean, not to say that, it's not like all of our different little groups are exclusive. You could be a member of both groups. So, we transition through these different roles in our career. So in any way you are interested in participating in this, but I will make a strong call for people with costing, because those are a little bit hard to come by. And we definitely need people like that in the group. So, if you have any interest in that, particularly if it's for the costing reasons, please let me or Christy know. Our email addresses are there, and I'm sure Melissa wouldn't mind hearing from you either. Michelle, before we move on, I wanted to make sure we didn't leave this topic before seeing if you had anything that you thought we should think about or anything
Yeah,
else.
I really do.
you're
I think it's
interested.
important
Okay,
for
great.
us. Yeah, I do. I think it's important for us to engage broadly. And as many participants that we can gather in this space would be very helpful. I'm also going to offer some of my staff to participate from my compliance team, just so that we can keep the synergy and the connectivity about how we move forward together. And while this might point us to the Office of Science and Policy, Mike Lauer, OER, he is the Deputy Director for Extramural Research, by which we serve under. I want to make sure that these costing policies are very clear. This is very OMB and grant policy related. And so we need to provide some sort of support in this space as well, and at least in the compliance area. So I will make sure that I raise this up to my leadership, and we are, me as the leader of Opera, I'm very wedded to participate and offer that participation.
Thank you, Michelle. And if you're interested in this and you have an interest in a leadership role, as I mentioned, we don't want to keep recycling the same people. We do have people in multiple roles already. And, one of some of the feedback that we get from our membership is that there is not enough opportunity for people to get involved. And, if this is something that you've got a strong background, strong interest in, let us know. And, if you have, some other leadership experience that you bring to the table, if you're somebody that, you don't know us already and you're not sure that we know you yet, please share that with us, because we definitely are looking for new faces, new perspectives on this topic. So I will leave that soapbox now, and we can move on to the next slide. Okay, I think Christy or Michelle, one of you will be sharing the thought exchange results. I know I went in during the video and put in some things, and I saw from the results so far, there are a lot of you have already participated. We really appreciate that. And I think we have decided that we're going to keep it open through the rest of the day. So if you were focused on the session and didn't want to be distracted by that, when this is over, feel free, please do go in and provide your thoughts as well. We won't shut it down and share results broadly until after that. So Melissa or Christy?
I also,
Sorry.
yeah, I also have it up, but if someone else wants to present that, that's also fine.
Sarah, if you wouldn't mind bringing that up, that would be great, because I think that you have a different view.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I forgot who was doing what right here.
No worries. Okay,
This is the part about FDP that Christy didn't know, is that we're never totally prepared for these things, and you have to wing it a little bit.
That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty in it.
That's how we make sure that we're at the bleeding edge of
Exactly.
going on. It's up to the moment updates.
No stale information from us.
So Sarah, we do still just see the slides if you're trying to bring up the thought
Ooh.
exchange dashboard.
Really? Okay. 1 second.
Awesome. Thank you. So one of the thoughts that I saw when I was looking through during the video, I think it sort of related a little bit to this first one, was a suggestion to kind of really explore cores or service centers. I think that might be a concrete thing that we could explore in terms of looking at direct charging or recovering as an indirect cost, to the extent that some of the support services for data management and sharing could be done through a core that might support direct charging, or if it's staff in a lab. I think that's definitely, better understanding guidance in terms of what can be direct charged versus indirect costs. And it makes me think a lot about some of the work that FDP did previously. The FAC committee had done frequently asked questions, I think, on the single IRB policy in terms of what costs associated with compliance with that policy could be charged as a direct or an indirect expense. So definitely some precedent there. Encourage Congress and cognizant agencies to add costs associated with data management. It was a separate F&A cost category. So F&A and D, maybe moving forward, they really are a very unique cost. Some sort of a data management clearinghouse. I wonder if maybe that's, we're going to have an update on the CUSP database in the research compliance, and maybe something like that, where you share different sections from data management plans instead of having to write de novo, or, definitely interested in hearing more about what's behind that thought. We definitely do need to be able to pay for all of this. There are a lot of costs when you sit down and think about how data management and sharing really comes into play at all aspects of the research lifecycle. There are a lot of costs. I think that there are a lot of really excellent thoughts here. And like Cindy mentioned, we're going to keep this thought exchange open for the rest of the day. So, as you're, sitting, having your glass of wine before dinner, if you come up with a data management and sharing costing, genius idea, please go in and share that with us. I think this feedback is going to be really helpful to us as we think through the full work plan for this upcoming working group, and then prioritize our deliverables. I don't know, Christy, is there anything you wanted to add?
I think you covered it. I am excited to kind of work through this with my glass of wine later. And then we will get these results published as part of our slide deck on the FTP website.
Great. All right, Sarah, I think we're ready to go back to the slides. And I think Cindy, it's the Cindy show from here, maybe.
Okay, well, we really just have this one slide left other than questions. So we can spend a little bit of time on any of these topics that anyone, if you want to share in the chat that you have a question about any of these. I will, start us all off. I've warned Michelle, like she already knew anyway. We can't have a session go by without asking about Fcpr elimination. And I know, Michelle, that You also wanted to mention some of the changes in the most recent NIH grants policy statement. So you want to go ahead and chime in here, and anything else on here that you want to go ahead and talk about?
Absolutely. And thank you for kicking it over. Absolutely would love to turn my, would really like to turn my camera on, but I'm scared that it's going to short me out. And so I apologize for that. I still look a little bit the same, just a little bit. But Happy New Year to everyone. So we talked about the federal cash transaction reported elimination, and we've been talking about that for ages. And then we also talked about last fiscal year that it was imminent and we were going to see some eliminations in the near future. So what we've heard and what we believe to be true is that this is going to go away effective March 2022 of this year. We think that one of the things that has slowed us down within NIH and the HHS department is that, there were some financial policies and accounting policies that, had to be taken into consideration. And I don't think any of us thought about that initially as we were looking to eliminate the federal cash transaction report. But we wanted to make sure that at the very least, the certification is something that we can stand by in an audit. We also wanted to make sure that the cash transaction elimination didn't break something else in another area. And we are now assured that that is the case. And so having looked at our CFOs and our deputy CFOs across the federal platform, both within NIH as well as at the HHS level, we are looking to eliminate the federal cash transaction report in March. If there is a delay, I promise I will let you know, but I don't anticipate a delay. I've been very closely connected to our Deputy Assistant Secretary at the HHS level, who has provided me with updates on a consistent basis. And she is just really extremely good about making sure that we had the latest and greatest. And so I'm really giving you that information. What we plan to do is put out something within the next few weeks on what that will look like in terms of submissions for your quarterly report. And I'm not sure that we have all of the answers, but I think after that March quarterly report, that's when it will end. So there may be a need to submit that last final FFR federal cash transaction portion. But we will need to discuss that within the department and amongst the NIH folks to make sure that the implementation is smooth and clear for all recipients, because this doesn't just impact NIH's recipients. It impacts the entire HHS platform. As it relates to I know we have had some continual challenges with the Ffr migration to PMS. We've been meeting internally within our leadership, our executive leadership committee, both with ERA, as well as with our Office of Financial Management and Ffr. The three leaders have been meeting, including myself, just to talk about some of the buckets that we've identified in this migration. In areas that consistently torture us all. Like every day, I'm scared to open up my email because I'm just afraid that there's just so many more challenges that we face. But I will assure you that we are now we've engaged HHS as well as other agencies just to determine whether or not there are some common buckets that we can identify and provide strategic support and solutions to versus these one-offs. And I think that that's going to be the case. We also, I'm happy to share that NIH is in a position where we have received approval to open up the NIH ERA portal to receive FFRs on a case-by-case basis so that these FFRs are not sitting out in no man's land, not being able to be processed, and you guys not being able to issue your carryovers or, do what you need to do internally. So we have looked at a system solution for that as well. And I'm really grateful to leadership as well as at the NIH level and at the HHS level to support the fact that we need to open up our FFR module again in some capacity to truly assist our recipients. And I'm sure you guys have several comments, concerns, and challenges that you'll raise here today. And I will be taking notes and taking those back. I think we have most of them. I can't imagine that there are any new nuances, but if there are, I will take those down, duly note them, and go forward to make sure that you all get what you need. And the one thing that I know that we are trying to do is stop the situation of having you guys being passed back and forth throughout NIH. So what we're hoping to do is just have you contact Opera, and then we figure out which way you need to go from there. Because many of these issues and challenges are not necessarily at the financial management level as well. So we want to make sure that we put you in the right space and place. And then I know that you guys saw that we have issued our December 2021 version of the NIH grants policy statement for FY22. We are extremely excited to have issued this for our community. I don't say that there are a whole lot of major changes, honestly, aside from just making sure that we outlined the new terms and new definitions for honoraria and offset. Those two were very important to us. One feeds into our foreign interference, and the other feeds into the definitions and the requirements that are outlined in the notice of award, page 1. And so if we were going to talk about offset, NIH strongly pushed that we define offset for our community. And so that's what we've done. As it relates to additional review criteria, we just wanted to make sure that we highlighted that information for the conference grants, which is the R13s and the U13, which is the Cooperative Agreement Companion. And highlighting that additional review criteria was really truly to implement the diversity plans that will be considered additional review criteria. As it relates to the I think it's part 2 again of the grants policy statement, we wanted to make sure that we included the NIH disclosure table that maps to the changes to the biographical sketch, as well as other support, financial conflict of interest, and that sort of thing. We add the link in the forms and the instructions to highlight the disclosure table so that it is very clear to our community what the expectation and the requirements are. I'm sure you guys will have many more questions to ask as it relates to what those instructions are and what the disclosure requirements are, but they're very closely wedded to the NSPM 33, and NIH has worked very closely with NSF and other federal research agencies to adopt and implement the NSPM very closely in terms of the terminology, in terms of literally where we collected on the forms, and the definitions. So we're hoping that this kind of close collaboration amongst our federal agencies, we've been doing this relieving administrative burden for many years. I think we're finally trying to get it like closely right now. A little bit better than it was maybe 5 years ago, but really trying to align ourselves and push really for agencies where there is no statutory requirement, where there is no regulatory requirement. Let's do it the way we need to do it for our community. And I think we have a lot of support there. For Chapter 4, under the public policy requirements, we have our changes in adding the clarification in NIH's role in determining those exemptions and recipient responsibilities, specifically where we have added language to decide whether some of these activities are exempt from human subject requirements. I don't know that it was always clear that this is not at the recipient responsibility, but at the NIH level. And so that we have made clear in our update. And then, of course, we've also outlined the use of single IRB, and we reissued or rewrote the section to make sure that we clarify that the policy needs to align with the instructions. And there was a bit of a disconnect before, and we wanted to make sure that we highlighted and clarified that there's a subtle difference between NIH's single IRB policy and the revised common rule. So to marry those together and avoid confusion, we've outlined and clarified the language so that it's flat and everyone sees the same thing on each side. You go to the common rule, you see one thing. You go to the NIH policy, you'll see the same. And that was the goal there. And then, of course, as you guys know, we've updated the Nrsa childcare costs for our fellows, and I want to make sure that you all are aware that this will be extended to our Nrsa trainees later this fiscal year. And that is very much on our radar, and we've outlined that in our upcoming guide notice, or the guide notice that outlines that the policy will be changing in the future.
Michelle, there were a couple of questions for you in the chat. One of them you addressed about whether there would be a March quarterly FFR, but someone else mentioned, I'm sorry, now the chat has scrolled down because people keep replying,
Okay.
says, we have had issues where NIH has approved a no-cost extension, but the FFR due date has not been revised in PMS. This results in it appearing that our institution has delinquent reports. Our NIH/PMS working on alignment when project period is extended. And then a lot of people chimed in that they were having the same issue.
So, I mean, I think that's the challenge with the reinventing grants management effort that we've seen, is that we have policy requirements and then the system doesn't align. PMS has not been updated to align with the policy requirements. Thanks for raising it to our attention again, and we are working with our leaders within PSC to try to figure out how we can make this work. For some reason, I really did think that this was something that was addressed, but it doesn't sound like it has been. So in other words, then that the PMS system is still showing the old project period date and it's not updating it the way it should. Is that correct for the no cost extension?
Christy, does that make sense to you?
Yes, I think that's what
Okay, yeah, and
folks are
someone else
experiencing.
chimed in.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Great.
thank
I
you,
do
Michelle.
want, we're getting close to time, and I did want to say something. The list here are things that the FDP committee is working on and looking at. None of this is something that we've accomplished. You know, someone was asking about the small credits. There are people on this committee who are discussing that and talking about whether there might be ways to address that so that we don't spend thousands of dollars trying to, you know, de-obligate 2 cents or whatever it is. So, but I just wanted to make it clear that, you know, that if it's listed here, that doesn't mean it's, hey, hooray, it's solved. It's, you know, it's things that are still in process.
And we do have leaders for some of these efforts, Cindy, that we can send out to this group.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And
Yep.
that's a great idea. And one of the things that I need to do in my current role is determine, I'm sure we have a listserv, but I don't think that this committee has really used it much, or at least not in a
Mhm.
very long time.
Mhm.
So please make sure you join that if you're not, or make sure you are part of that if you're interested in this committee or any of these activities, because we do need to start communicating more in between meetings, so that this meeting isn't as much about just sharing information with you, but it's more about, here's what we're working on,
Yeah.
what can we do next, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So also I would point out that some of these topics were discussed in depth during the September meeting. The video for that, the session summary, the slides, those are all posted like with our other meetings. So please go back and revisit that. Training grants is something that Christy is very interested in, with the issues with financially with those. So I would suggest contacting her, or you could send it to the listserv, or both of us, if you have issues there. Someone put in the chat, and someone else chimed in about having to report labor hours. And on the one hand, we would say, well, that's usually a DoD thing, and there's not really anything they can do. They have to have that for contractor man-hour reporting, and we've all kind of come up with workarounds where we throw a statement in there about, well, this is, we're reporting estimates because we don't track hours. But maybe there is an opportunity there, because I know we're probably all a little nervous. We don't feel 100% warm and fuzzy about doing that. So, maybe there's an opportunity for us to work as a group where we could consistently address that, and not have to feel like we're kind of out there on our own and just pointing fingers and saying, well, I know other people do this. So, nothing is really off the table. If there's something, costing related, feel free to bring it up. Like I said, I'll try to get, or I'll send something out to the listserv. I'll give y'all another, week or two to get signed up. So, I'll try to commit to maybe early February, sending out something to the group, reminding you about these opportunities, and soliciting ideas and volunteers for the ideas that we've already been discussing, and also anything new that you might want to add. So Michelle or Christy, we are right at 4 o'clock. Any parting remarks?
Well, I've seen several, comments in this section about NIH and waiting for 6 months and having several challenges with the FCTR reports and the FFRs. And sincerely, and I don't think NIH was prepared, nor HHS was prepared for the unintended consequences of the change from ERA to PMS, and the system not being linked to our internal processes. You guys have to know that that's just not the intent on anybody's part. The challenge, though, of course, has been, because the system hasn't been linked, we are desperately trying to fix it. And that's the best that we can say. And I extend my sincerest apologies on behalf of the NIH leadership as it
Michelle, we so appreciate you and your colleagues at NIH, because we do realize that that you've gone above and beyond with a lot of these things. You could have pointed fingers and said, well, that's a HHS thing, or that's a PMS thing, that doesn't have anything to do with us, and just said, we're staying out of it, and you haven't done that at all. You've been right there with us. You more than almost any other federal colleague I can think of, really takes the time to understand what our issues are, and realize that these administrative things really can bog down the science, and that it's important to resolve them, and resolve them the right way, and in a collaborative way, which is why we're the Federal Demonstration Partnership.
Exactly.
So thank you very much. And
Yeah,
thank you
no,
for
I'm on
being
it,
with
and
us
we're
today.
all on it. I promise you guys, it will be resolved, even if it has to turn back into an ERA module. It's going to be resolved.
Well, if you're not paying attention to the chat, you're getting a lot of love in the chat. So thank you, and thanks Melissa for joining us, and Christy, welcome to the FACT leadership, and
Thank
thank
you.
everyone for attending.
Yes.
And
Thank you.